Hi, today's video is gonna be a bit different. That's because I missed the last video and a whole other series of commitments lately. And I just want to share my learnings from this and how I handle it to get back on track. Because getting back on track used to be the hardest thing in the past, and I suspect that it's hard for so many people out there. And if that's you, I hope this video will be of some help. Hi and welcome to Resia here from Lead Yourself. I'm helping you to lead your life towards more freedom and more happiness by providing insights and tips on how to improve your life when it comes to time, energy and money. If you want to take part of those, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell right now. Nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes sometimes and we are all human. Yet we still find it hard to accept our flaws and to forgive ourselves when they come up to the surface. Now, I'm gonna tell you my story about what happened and why, but stick through it because in the end you'll be left with some important things that may help you in your situation when you're trying to recommit. And I think it's valuable for you to learn about those things in a context. A couple of months ago, I embarked on 2 journeys that ended up requiring consistent action from my part. One was to start this YouTube channel, and the other was to join a program called Amazing Selling Machine in order to start an Amazon e-commerce business. This was all on the side of the full-time job that I already have, where I'm running my own company as a consultant. I had a lot of ups and downs trying to fit everything into my schedule, and it felt like something always had to give. So in a way, I was overcommitting, or at least that's what it felt like. But I was still able to find many hours during my days when I was doing next to nothing, or just slacking and watching a movie or something like that. So I was sure that I could solve it somehow. And sure enough, about 2 months ago, I did end up solving it by batching up videos and making daily progress on the Amazing Selling Machine program. So I found a balance, and it even felt like I had a lot of time left. So structuring and optimizing the work had helped a lot, but I needed time to get to that point and 3 focused kickoff days for solving the puzzle. And getting away from everyday life and being able to focus on myself and my goals was invaluable in this regard. But like I said, now I felt balanced and ready to take on more. And in that phase, a wonderful opportunity presented itself when my sister-in-law wanted to partner up and build a business. And this was something that was just too good to turn down, so now I had another big project at my hands. And this project raised to the top of my priority list as it's time critical. This new project is requiring a bunch of time and energy and many late nights. But luckily I had batched up videos, but when it was time to record new ones, I was so tired that I had to sleep basically 24 hours straight. And that's when I realized the situation isn't gonna last. I missed my last video as a result, and that felt horrible. I don't know about you, but when I feel something that I haven't felt before, it tends to result in 2 things. First, it feels like I really want to give up everything in my life completely, and second, it tends to lower the bar for the commitment so that I feel that the commitment becomes tainted and less important. And it's critical to handle both of these outcomes properly in order to recommit. Now, what do I mean when I talk about giving up completely? In my case, I ended up deleting everything from my schedule, feeling that it needed to be redone as it obviously wasn't working. While that's completely understandable and correct, there is the intermediate result of not having anything in there. And in the past, it used to stay empty for very long periods of time, before I finally had forgotten enough about the failure to recommit, often doing the same thing again that I was doing before with the same fatal results. The most classical example of when this happens to people is when they set out on a fitness goal. Once they get sick or something else interrupts it, they give up. And for some weird reason, they are not able to recommit until after several months. And that's when their weight tends to go up and down like a yo-yo. So what's the critical thing here? Where does it go wrong? We know that realizing that something needs to change and improve when it's not working is all good. The problem is when we feel the need for that clean slate without actually giving it to ourselves. We wipe it clean on the surface but never really deal with the issue, and this prevents us from recommitting. Now, realizing that we exhibit this behavior is a step on the road, and as always, awareness is a prerequisite for change. So what should we do instead? To actually solve it, we must figure out the root cause of the problem. And there's a little trick that can help with this. Start with the failure that made it all fall apart. Let's say, for example, that you stopped exercising when you get sick. Now ask, why did that happen? But when answering this, beware to focus on things that are within your control here. Focusing on why you get sick may not yield much that you can solve. It just happens. Unless you expose yourself to infections more than necessary, in which case it may be something to dig into. But normally you should focus on why that had an effect on your exercise habit. It could be, for example, that you get lost in your training plan when you suddenly experienced a degraded performance. Now you're getting closer to something that you can actually solve, but there are still two paths to explore here. The first is your training plan and your knowledge. The second is your reaction to the degraded performance. Try to look at every answer and ask the why questions that cause you to dig deeper. You should dig deeper until your answers start to resemble something like, well, because. In the end, you may end up with several paths of questions and answers, and that's okay, but focus on things you can control. I can tell you from experience that this digging can take a lot of time, but sitting down and focusing on digging deep with why questions this way can speed it up from weeks of brain activity to a few hours. Once you have uncovered the real problems, it suddenly becomes possible to solve them once and for all. And there might be several problems at work at the same time. You could either try to solve them all or take a more iterative approach where you solve one and see what happens. And you still have those insights with you. This learning activity is totally worth it as it prevents you from making the same mistake again, but also has the effect of helping you get through the tough times of dealing with failure, because you're actively dealing with it instead of sticking your head under the ground. Whenever we're facing any sort of stressful or uncomfortable situation, it's always best to take immediate action instead of letting things fester. So instead of just clearing your schedule or whatever you do when you give up, do this little exercise first. Maybe you just have to tweak a tiny little thing. That's often the case for many things. We believe we need radical changes when all we need are tiny tweaks. Think of a golfer shooting in the wrong direction. A radical change to the angle of the club will not help and will probably cause the ball to go wrong in an entirely different direction. A tiny tweak is what's needed. And think about it and you'll realize that this is true for many things. So now we know how we can deal with things so that we don't give up everything altogether. Now moving on to talk a little bit about lowering the bar for the commitment, which was the other potential result of failing. When you break a promise to yourself, like failing a commitment, you end up losing your integrity, which makes it harder to keep promises in the future. It's important to repair this damage by properly forgiving yourself. This includes taking responsibility for your part in what went wrong, which you'll have already sort of done when you went through the problem-solving exercise with the why questions. It also includes allowing yourself to go through an emotional phase and actually feel guilty. This can be painful, but you have to feel it. This is what will prompt you to want to make it up to yourself and want to change. Make it up to yourself in any way you see fit. If you're struggling with exercise, go do an extra session right now. This is when you'll start to feel like you're coming back stronger. Now use that to boost your recommitment and make sure you bring your learnings from the why exercise with you and make this your clean slate to start over. I created my own clean slate now by starting to focus on my well-being a bit more again. No more late nights, back to early mornings instead, as that's when I tend to function the best and when I'm the most productive. So my tweak is in when and for how long I sleep. I still have things to solve when it comes to fitting everything into one schedule, which will take some time to get right, but I'm sure I can do it. What I will do differently is to allow for downtime and rest. I believe you'll find that the proper clean slate is more powerful than what you might have thought. And remember to find the root cause of what happened. Take responsibility and solve it. And deal with that guilt by allowing it and then making up for it. And view the experience as a learning experience now that you actually learned something. Well, I hope you did learn something. If you did, hit that like button below and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more insights and tips about self-improvement. And I'll see you next week. Bye!